change. So Mitchell, hold on for a minute. The team is making a change now.
Okay.
Yeah, just a second. Just a second.
So you can't make more than one host, sir?
It is only one host allowed, actually.
Okay.
Co-hosting is
Michelle, then do you have your PPT also with you?
I do, yes.
Okay, so maybe can you share your screen from there then?
I'm not sure. Have I been made the host?
You will be made the host in a minute.
Okay.
Sure.
This break time is not for you to go for breakfast, Michelle, so please don't disappear.
You're tempting me. Although it's becoming closer to lunchtime now. I've just realised the time, because obviously we're now at the shortest time difference in the year. But I'm still thinking that we are 5.5 hours of a difference between India, but just 4.5 now, isn't it?
That's correct, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm making Mitchell as host now. Stephen, Mitchell should be made as host, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I am now the host. Okay, now please bear with me whilst I Oh, sorry, forgive me. This will stop. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Right. Let me slideshow from beginning. Okay, can you tell me, can you see my screen now?
Yes, we are.
I can see some nods. Okay, unfortunately, this has gone into full screen mode, so I've lost my notes. So apologies if my presentation doesn't quite have the eloquence of Stephen's. I'm going to try and remember all the information that underpins the few points that I'd like to make today. Firstly, huge thank you for being invited to participate in this webinar. Very grateful for that invitation, and really found it very interesting what Stephen shared with us to kind of kick off the webinar and the topic. You've already got a little bit of a biography of me that John shared at the start of our session, so this is just a little bit of an overview, and also to introduce my colleague Megha Malhotra, who is on the webinar as well. Megha's my number 2. So if any of the tech goes or anything like that, she's going to swoop in and finish the presentation, but hopefully that won't be an issue. And obviously Megha is also available for questions and so on as we progress through our conversation today. Before we move into the slightly more formal body of the presentation, I'd just like to share with you that I visited India many times, as you can see on the slide, and Chennai is one of the cities I have visited the most in the times that I've gone, because we recruit many students from the Chennai area. I can't imagine what it must be like at the moment. I can't imagine, and the thing that I struggle most to imagine is maybe the lack of traffic. I don't know if that's how it's working there, but I imagine everyone's life is very different at the moment. And we have to embrace some of the positives that come from that. And as Stephen mentioned, really try and put the focus and energy on that. So it's absolutely, you have my sympathies. Lockdown is a challenge for all of us. But there's also that moment to kind of look outside the window, or actively listen and see if we can hear the traffic and so on, and take that moment to just reset and find the goods in where we are in this terrible situation. So I'm just going to explain a little bit about our university, just to give you some context, the points that I'm going on to make. So as a university, we've been around for a very long time, so origins going back 200 years. We were a college, then a polytechnic, then a university. Throughout that history, our focus has always been on very vocational subjects. That's always the type of subject we've delivered. So what I mean by that is we don't offer theoretical subjects like you know, English literature or so on. All of our subjects are really aligned with particular career paths. So that might be architecture, engineering, computing, art and design, pharmacy and life sciences. And also we have a large number of health professions courses as well, so nursing, radiography, physiotherapy, and so on. Which is, you know, a number of our courses map very closely with the courses that our colleagues here today deliver. So that's, hopefully you'll find relevance in what I'm sharing on that basis. Our university is very committed to our applied approach to teaching and learning. In the UK, universities kind of fall into two camps, although they're not, you know, rigidly defined. We are a teaching university. Other universities are research-oriented universities. So our university is really, the focus is on the individual, it's on the classroom, it's really on the delivery of the education. So we've always employed an applied approach to teaching and learning, because the students of today are the professionals of tomorrow. So very much about you know, getting our students empowered, engaged around their education, and really thinking for themselves, how would I translate what I'm learning in the classroom into delivering it in the field, you know, in the boardroom, wherever their career destination might be. We have a population of 16,000 students. That is combined. We have on-campus students make up around about 70% of that population, and we do have a significant online population as well. So that's already, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We do have about 30% of our students that opt to study their qualifications completely online. We were an early adopter to online delivery and virtual classrooms. So what I mean by that is, a number of years ago, we realised, as the research indicates is only going to get more and more so in future, that a number of people, particularly qualified professionals who are looking to advance their status or pick up qualifications whilst in practice, they didn't want to return to campus. They didn't want a face-to-face education, because they wanted to put education around their lives, around their work, around their family commitments, and so on. So we have, for a number of years, offered wholly online programs, and as I mentioned, around about 30% of our population opt for that. 100% of our student population, however, does benefit from our virtual classrooms, which we have had set up for a number of years. Now, I know in India it varies depending on institution to institution, but we have in place platforms called Moodle, Blackboard, Collaborate, and so on, which we use to enhance our education of regardless of mode of delivery. So the face-to-face students also use the virtual classroom to post questions and pull down lectures that they may have missed or that they want to kind of cover again, and so on. So we, from that point of view, we were in quite a good position as you know, the reality of this started to strike. So here are the challenges. So very much as with Stephen's presentation, we're talking about challenges and kind of rewards, because that's the way that we're choosing to stay positive about what we're all going through. You'll recognise a lot of the things that I'm about to share with you as things that you have already started to do yourself, and I'm sure you've got some, you know, fantastic examples of even, you know, more interesting tactics that you have developed to deal with this current situation. So I'm really looking forward to the question and answer as we move towards the end of our time together. But these are the challenges that we face. So thinking about the profile of university that we have, the nature of the subjects we deliver, and the way in which we you know, are committed to delivering education, it actually, for a moment, it represented quite a challenge for us, because how do you move the applied teaching to a wholly virtual environment when it's so important for us, for our students to really get on, you know, under the car bonnet, if you like, into the engine of their education through labs, through simulation, through master classes, through all of those things that are such a massive part of the way we deliver education. How do you deal with that when suddenly everything becomes 100% remote? Also, you know, as a small university, we are very, very well known in our student population and in the UK context as having a very high level of student satisfaction. In the National Student Survey, Robert Gordon University outperforms the UK average on that basis. That student satisfaction is often linked to things like approachability. It's linked to the personal connection that many of our students have with our academics and my academic colleagues. So how do you replicate that when, again, it's a wholly remote environment? And then the other thing which was really important for us was considering other stakeholders that are essential to helping us kind of deliver the commitment that we make to our students when they arrive at our university. Our whole emphasis at Robert Gordon University is about improving our students' employability prospects, so that post-graduation we're hoping that they're in a really strong position for getting a good job quickly. And again, we've got some really fantastic statistics around that. So one of the kind of facets to that commitment to employability that we have is working very closely with professional bodies, you know, employers and so on. So a big challenge for us was not just to react in the way that we wanted to do for either the simplicity of being able to move forward with a roadmap or being able to have an instant answer. We had to be very mindful of the fact that there's actually these other stakeholders that have an important say in the outcome of our students choosing to study at Robert Gordon University. So yeah, so it was really important that we kind of engaged with people like the Chartered Management Institute, the Royal Institute of British Architects and so on, because many of our students have chosen to come to Robert Gordon University because their courses are approved by those professional bodies, validated by them, they'll get a professional qualification through them. So we really needed to interact with the stakeholder group, the wider stakeholder group, rather than just thinking purely of ourselves and our students. Okay, so I'm going to move on to some of the things that we have done, and this is just a very small example of some of the ways in which we chose to come up with you know, some solutions to some of these problems identified in the previous slide. And a key thing, and it was a bit of a journey, is this leading by example. So what I mean by that is what Robert Gordon University chose to do when it became obvious that we were going into lockdown is we took a short period of time, much like the IT department or the applications admissions department Stephen was speaking about there. We took a moment where we just gathered our thoughts, took our breath and scenario planned everything. So whilst other UK universities were closing their campuses, Robert Gordon University didn't. We stayed open for an extra few days in line with government advice to just really make the most of what we could do to, whilst we were together as educators, to make the plans and build the infrastructure for that move to wholly online teaching. Now that calmness, that foresight to do that has actually, we've been rewarded in that regard, in that, as mentioned, we are one of the only Scottish universities that's been able to deliver continuous education with no deviation from our semester kind of landmarks, so things like exam dates, final assignments, and so on. However, it was unpopular. It was unpopular with our students for us not to close at the same point as every other Scottish university. We were viewed as being slightly irresponsible. We were viewed as being slow to react, because what wasn't realised at the time by the student population is that actually what we were doing is taking that time to really reinforce the plans. So that was a really interesting kind of moment in time where you know, we knew that we were acting in the interest of the students. However, the perception was that we were being difficult or we were being contradictory to what other people were doing. But the leading by example here is the key message to put across, is having that calmness, having that clarity, and sometimes making a decision that might on the surface seem unpopular, but for the benefit of as seamless a delivery as possible is actually, you know, it was really rewarding for us to do that, and all our students will complete their semester without, you know, delay or deviation from the original kind of expected outcome. Obviously the deviation is to the delivery. The next one is show innovation in teaching techniques, and again, I know we've already started to talk this afternoon for you guys, about some of these green shoots that are popping up of what that could look like, and some people getting really inspired at this opportunity to kind of reset or you know, change an outlook. So some of the examples that I wanted to share with you that we've employed for our university, just a small number of examples that come to mind, where, let's see, so for something like, so remembering that our university is very, very much an employment oriented university, it's really how we promote ourselves. It's our kind of core message that we will help you improve your graduate employment prospects. So, some of our schools had a greater challenge than others in how they make that transfer to kind of how they make that transition to assessing people when they can't depend on looking at their lab work, or the students can't go off campus to do a commercial project. The one thing that I thought was really interesting that our School of Pharmacy and Life Sciences did, as part of its the final semester assignment, final taught semester 2 assignment for Pharmacy and Life Science Master's students, they were given the assignment that they were set was that they have to write a research proposal for a government funding bid. So drawing from the research that they had done themselves in their first semester, they then had to take that in and write a a research bid for government funding, which is then being assessed by both my colleagues in our School of Pharmacy and Life Sciences, but we're also calling on some of our external contacts in, you know, kind of research institutes to mark and critique that. Now, that assignment that they're doing is obviously an assignment to get the credit to, you know, fulfil what they need for the learning outcomes of the module. However, it's also a working document for them then to draw upon in future if they want to apply for PhDs, if they want to apply for government funding for research projects in the future. They've got a really nice kind of self-driven template that they can, you know, add to, embellish, and so on. So I thought that was a really interesting way to kind of merge that commitment to increasing their awareness and skills, if you like, from with a regard to their future employment, but also combine that with a really, you know, chunky, meaningful assessment that felt relevant, rather than switching from an a lab assignment to just a 3,000, 8,000 word essay on a theoretical topic. Some of the other examples are our events management students. And again, another significant assignment that they do in their second semester is they run a major local event. So a festival in the local community, which is a fundraising exercise, and the event students have to do everything. So they have to generate funds to run the event, they have to source locations, they have to get participants, and they have to advertise and promote it. and that's a really significant part of their final marks. My colleague in our School of Creative and Cultural Business realised in January, the event typically happens in May, realised in January that this was going to be unlikely to happen in the traditional sense. So what he did is he reset the assignment so that the students would now have to launch a completely virtual digital event and translate everything into the digital environment, which called for them to draw upon a lot of different tactics and techniques. You know, the students had to become really creative about how they make that transfer. They've still got the goal of wanting to raise as much money as possible for the local charity, which is kind of underpins the assignment as well. And the event was just this weekend there, and I believe it was you know, a big success. But the students really responded really well to that transfer. Yes, they had their panic, as Stephen mentioned, but they actually got on board with the opportunity to really own this is something completely unique that their seniors had never done. Another thing that's an interesting one, and this is it's almost a combination of point 1 and point 2 on the slide here, is about being, and actually point 4 when I tell you. So coming back to the slide before where we spoke about the satisfaction levels that our students typically, you know, rate us upon as being very high. There was definitely that feeling of being remote and how to bridge that remoteness. And interestingly, our School of Computing, who are not always forthcoming, the students are, and I'm sure it's the same in your School of Computing as well, the students are known for being, you know, wonderfully proactive in their verbal communication or so on. They tend to be a lot more kind of technically oriented and so on. But the students came forward and said that they were finding it quite difficult. They were missing the kind of the drop-in element of being able to just go and knock on an academic's door and ask the question to kind of, you know, go over what was covered in the lecture and so on. So what my colleagues one of the colleagues in the School of Computing Science and Digital Media did is actually set that as an assignment to a group of students to say, okay, you've identified that you've got this missing element to your university experience. Why don't you go away and come up with a solution? What kind of ideas can you come up with? And they set that problem that the students had identified, or that need or want that the students had, and they set it as an assignment. And what the students did is they went away and they came back with various solutions. So whether that was developing an app, whether that was creating a platform, and the most successful one, which is now being implemented as a matter of supporting the students, is they've created a virtual drop-in environment where it replicates the idea of knocking on the academic's door and being able to kind of have a chat with them. So I thought that was a really nice combination of being a student identified need and my colleagues, my academic colleagues, kind of thinking, what can we do to make this into a fun kind of relevant project for them. The last thing that I'm going to say, well, the last kind of couple of things that I'm going to say is keep in sight of your key focus. So the key focus is really, sorry, we've got a question. Sorry, I've been slightly distracted there by a question that's came in, but so we'll come back to that. I thought it was maybe John telling me that I've spoken too long. Okay, so keep in sight the key focus. As I mentioned at Robert Gordon University, as is the same with your institution, employability is really what draws students to our institution. That kind of contract that we have with them almost, that says if you come to us, we'll, you know, try and make you as highly employable as we possibly can. So it was really important that we didn't lose sight of that commitment to these, you know, to this cohort of students. So in addition to the stuff that my academic colleagues are doing by bringing in guest speakers from industry and continuing to deliver some of the things that they always include as standard by way of assessments and you know, use of case studies. We have a department in the university which is responsible for extracurricular employability support, if you like. It's called our Employability Hub. what they're doing is they're making sure that they're running a real, you know, a really robust sequence of employability related events for students to kind of drop into or register for if they're interested. So for example, tomorrow we have a live employers event where a number of employers will be available and kind of replicating a campus fair idea, and the students can individually see the employers as well as the employers being able to kind of broadcast their recruitment messages and then break out into smaller classes. The final thing that I want to say, because I'm appreciative that I'm talking too much and we're going over time, is really we've touched upon it already, which is engage the student voice. Your students have got some absolutely fantastic ideas out there. They're also networking with their friends and family who are at other institutions, so sometimes you can pick up little kind of nuggets of what's working in other places. As we saw with that computing idea, they really embraced that empowerment of, you know, kind of solving their own identified problem. In addition to that, we've done a lot of work with our central functions to make sure that there's a lot of support information that is on our virtual classroom, our virtual environment, which is called Moodle, so that students can access support around mental well-being, so, advice. You know, they need advice as much as we do about making that transition to working from home, support mechanisms. We've got, you know, apps to help people with relaxation, mindfulness and so on, and also getting our student union, our Students Association, to make sure that they're helping, you know, through social media, through their channels, really making sure that every RGU student knows that it's okay to talk and it's absolutely that they can get in touch, and it's a really difficult time. So making sure that nobody feels isolated, or let's try and reduce that isolation as much as possible, because being at university is a very collaborative experience, and what we don't want is to sacrifice that just because, you know, we're kind of apart, where we can be together and be apart at the same time, which was one of the points that Stephen made earlier as well. Now, hopefully that's kind of been in lines with what you were expecting from my presentation today. I'm more than happy to take questions, and I think we're going to move on to do that. John, I can see that there have been a couple of questions come in whilst I've been speaking. I don't know if you want me to answer those at this point, just to close out the RGU section, or if we'll just do it at the end.
We can do it at the end.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Oh, Stephen, we can't hear you.
No, you need to enable this. I think you muted him, Stephen.
Oh, if I did, I did it by accident. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so you can give the control back to Stephen now. Yeah, Stephen is released now.
There you go. I'm so sorry, Stephen. I did not realise that I'd put you on mute.
No,
okay, but hopefully that was helpful and in line with your expectations for our session today.
Yeah, it's very difficult to bring in, you know, learning and teaching in the way that what you're talking about, applied teaching in an university, and that is brought online. That's a great sharing. Yeah. And also listening to the students' voice and, you know, getting it from them, because they have much more ideas as to how to engage online. They can actually give us a lot more in terms of, you know, how to go about this whole process. Thank you so much, Michelle, for that experience from your university, how you take care of not only the students, the faculty, how they engage, and also the stakeholders, you know, all the people who are for employment, they come, and how, just like how you said, very recently I heard a job fair involving 16,000 people online, and my mind was blowing away. So there is technology available, and people are rediscovering themselves to make job fairs available online, you know. So everything is happening online today. So thank you very much for that. I'll now move on to Nithi. Nithi, I'll share your presentation.
Thank you.
Host, you will have to enable my sharing, screen sharing. You have to make me host.
Mitchell has to do it here.
Yeah, Michelle,
I have to do it. Okay, yeah. Sorry, forgive me.
On the dots on mine, you have to say.
Yep, make host. There we go. Do you want to? Yes, there we go. Okay, Stephen, that should be with you now.
That's right. I can now see this. Yes. There you go, Nithi. Your presentation is there. Yes.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Stephen. And thanks for being my secretary for moving slides for this session.
Pleasure.
Well, a very good afternoon to all of you. And as you can see, that's a picture of me pre-COVID. It's there for everybody to see. And well, there are the three components which I think I would like to cover. I'm aware about time, so we will go in sort of in good speed in what we need to do. The three components that I've actually, got to cover. And I was actually having a conversation with Stephen this morning with regard to I'm going to be the last person in, and that's going to be a big challenge. He turned around and he said, well, I think that's an opportunity for you to keep everybody awake. So I think it's a question of the perspective in which how we look at things, and that changes the entire way in which we would work, isn't it? So we look at a problem as a problem, or, we're looking at, an opportunity. So what are we looking at? So this is interesting. So the three areas that I'm actually covering for today, which is one is on online and blended. And I've used the word blended for the simple reason that in the presentations with the earlier two individuals who were on, we did say that not everything can be possibly online. We're aware of that. And there are components of certain degrees which has to have a face-to-face component. And therefore, the topic will be covered on both. And I like this interesting caption, geography is now history. So in a sense, location is irrelevant at this moment in time. I'd also cover a little bit about the success stories of British institutions in terms of what they have done over the years, not as in what they did during COVID, but over the years, how technology has always been embraced over a period of time. And I will also be perhaps coming to a conclusion about what we can now do about it. Yes, where we are, what was exactly that we could do at this moment in time in order to make our programs online. How is it we could get all the stakeholders involved? And that's the three components that I'm actually covering today. I remember, it's fine, leave the slide on to the next one, no problem, Stephen, that's okay, sure. Perfectly fine. I remember about 5 years ago, I was part of a presentation when a professor from a university in Perth did say that, imagine about this, universities with a building will be a thing of the past. And certainly we're not there at that stage at this moment in time. We still have buildings in universities. We haven't got rid of it. But what is very interesting is how things evolved. If we actually look into that perspective that universities with a building will be a thing of the past, our entire action plans will begin to start embracing and looking at things differently, right? And certainly I'm sure in the last 5 years, we've gone many, many ways, right? So that's just thought I would just explain that a bit. But moving on, on to the next slide, the advantages. Now the advantages here, I'm actually covering it basically onto three, components of trying to see who are the beneficiaries here. One is at the student level. Let's see what happens at the student level in one lens as a student. And if I'm a student on an online or a blended learning, what is it that I'm looking for? I truly want to look for something which is I'm able to study at my own pace and in my own place, right? Wherever I would like it to be. And it would simply mean that I would carry a job with me. I might be moving locations. I could possibly have social gatherings, could be getting married. Well, not me again, but there'll be a lot of things that would be happening in people's lives. And that's exactly what we are looking at in terms of allowing people to give their own pace and place. So it simply means a degree program shouldn't have a stipulated time period, which is so constrained for somebody not being able to complete it. So that's very important. I should also have an access to recorded and live sessions available. I'm able to come on and listen to it again. Right? And to be able to interact with my peers. What about virtual classrooms? I mean, look at it from a real perspective. If I'm in a classroom, I'm still learning with my peers. And when I'm away from it, I should be able to learn from my peers. And that's an opportunity that the online platform should be able to give me. And that's extremely very important as well. Okay? And it's also important that I feel part of the university, not distant as distant. And far away. So if I'm a student of Satyabama and a distance learning online program, I would like to be invited, come on campus, be able to use the facilities whenever I'm around and able, and to feel connected. And I think that's very, very important. It's interesting to know that I graduated out of an MBA program from Strathclyde back in 1996, and I'm having an access to the online library till date. It's quite amazing. And all the e-books, the journals are still available for me. And you look at the connection that is still there. Okay? Another very important part is, of course, the continuous professional development. This is a very interesting course. I've also seen in Robert Gordon University's website, there's a lot of CPD courses being launched, right? So you're a graduate of a couple of years ago, you want to see what's happening in the field at this moment in time. University has the option of bringing in people from the corporate side and offering these courses as an add-on, right? And that's very important as well, to keep the alumni connected and also for the profession in which that you graduated. Let's move on to the next bit. Who's the next one that whose lens are we going to look at right now? We're looking at it from the faculty point of view. Let's look at it from a faculty point of view. Fantastic. That this is an interesting communication that I've had with a number of faculties around in the Indian colleges and universities, where people will say, we just don't have the time for research. We just expect to do a lot of teaching. And that is an issue here, where you're unable to push the number of publications to the level to increase departmental rankings, to improve university rankings. All of this actually comes from research and publications. There's so much time available if we actually do a little bit of a replacement in terms of the online learning. And more research simply means we've got more corporate presence, we've got more funding perhaps coming in, more government will probably start giving in funds for the purpose of research, which we are begun to embark on. And I think that's very important, right? More interestingly, of course, is the visibility that faculty would have in terms of being able to put their programs online, right? Not all faculties are going to write books, make publications of books, but they'll be very proud of coming out with courses which are actually available online and their name is there, right? It looks at it from a faculty point of view. That's a great advantage. What about from the university point of view? That's very interesting. We have a very new student market that's actually coming up because the geography isn't there. Your alumni, for example, may have gone away after your undergraduation or your post-graduation after the master's, but they can still come back for any form of study. Could be a research, could be a master's. They could be still connected and do a program. And that's very interesting, because this is at the university level, we are increasing the student number base, right? So we could promote the master's program for all undergraduate students who are taking up a job. That's another way of looking at it, right? Faculty hire, that's a very interesting one. Now, location has become a very big issue today, and not many people are ready to move with their families. But the best of faculties can really be hired if you actually tell them, stay where you are. Be part of us. And it becomes so much easier in terms of getting the best of the faculties to be available for X number of hours. Why are we asking people to move locations when all that we want is them to facilitate a program? Right? So that's one bit that I wanted to actually cover. Just move on to the next part of it. It's about the success models of British institutions. I have been directly involved with the Edinburgh Business School, Heriot-Watt University's MBA program for a long, long time. This is back in 2000. I know over 25 years this program has actually been run on as an MBA program on distance learning. But over the years, they have actually taken and embraced technology in different ways. I remember how it started, and I know exactly where it is today. Today, the program has got, I think, 10,000 active students and over 20,000 alumni. It's quite amazing. And as for a distance learning student, one of the things that I always would like to feel is get certifications for the qualifications that I'm getting every now and then. Why am I waiting for this degree to be over? Right. When I finish a module, I get a certificate. That's a very nice field thing, which actually the Heriot-Watt University did. So every time you finish a module, you get a certificate. You include it into your CV. That's interesting. So if you finish 3/4 of the MBA, you get a postgraduate diploma, for example. Interesting. You finish the 9-module MBA, you get the full MBA. So it's very nice to include it into the CV, right? People would like to get motivated in that way. That's one perfect example. University of London has been doing distance learning programs for ages, right? And I think long before many people even knew what distance learning was all about, right? And my understanding is I think they have at least about 50,000 students, either as completely online or through supported centers. So that's exactly where they've gone. And I think we've got a huge opportunity here with Satyabama to start looking at, look at all our schools. What is it that we could do? What are the programs that we can actually go online? One of the other very important points here is that all degrees are of exactly the same value in the UK. They do not differentiate distance learning degrees to their on-campus degrees. There is no such thing as a degree coming from the Directorate of Distance Education. There isn't something. I remember attending one seminar wherein which faculty members from Tamil Nadu were present, and it was a panel of faculty members from the UK and European universities, and one member, faculty from the Indian side who were listening to the speeches, he stood up and said, well, could you tell me how do you differentiate your distance learning students from your on-campus? And there was silence at the other end. And for a moment, he didn't understood the question. And then he looked around and said, but why do you want to have a difference? This is the question. He turned back and asked the question. So it's quite interesting that the way in which that we see things as we should separate the two, and there is no need for us to separate. If you've got the right assessment methodologies in place, if you've got them standardized, why do we worry about it? And that's important to look at it that way. Let's move on to the next point. What exactly it says is peer learning. This is very, very important. It's an integral part of online education. My faculty can come there and deliver for me and go away. The recordings might be available, but I want to be connected with my students, with my classmates all the time. This is very important and very, very crucial. I should be able to do that because it's sometimes a very lonely journey. And the only way you can actually remove that lonely journey is to bring this virtual classrooms in place, right? So we have to keep the student in mind over here. And what is interesting is I've actually quite well researched on the online programs that are available from British institutions. And I think it's across the board, whether it's the building construction, healthcare, business, you name it, mechanical, civil. I'm sure Michelle can give a big list of that, but almost everything is absolutely available in terms of distance learning. So I don't think that that's something that we're talking about an impossibility. But what we really need to think here in terms of what's the component that we need to have face-to-face, where it needs to be a bit blended, right? So the research degrees, for example, might require supervisorial visits. Right? Yes, could possibly be. So there could be certain things that needs to be made blended, but we don't need it for some of the others. Right? So that's one angle that I think it's worth covering. Just to move on to the next slide, which is my last piece, which is actions to be taken. I know that there is no magic answer from this presentation, but I think it creates a lot of mindsets. And interestingly, when Stephen was making a presentation about what is it that in terms of, I think it's a question of the challenges on teaching online. I remember the statistics that came out from the data collected. People have this fear about face-to-face and about participation from students. And honestly speaking, and these are things on the online, you would actually see a lot more interactions. You can actually make a lot more programs on tutorial basis rather than on the lectures part. The lectures can always be uploaded as videos, and you can have interaction sessions where people will come to clear their doubts. Right? In fact, the participation would become much, much better, to be very honest with you. So from an individual standpoint, from faculty point, I think there's a lot of things which is more psychological. Right? We sit around in mindsets. It's a technology fear. Oh, if no face-to-face, we won't be able to do this program. And there's a lot of mindsets that sits around it. So I think we need to sit down and think, well, I think we can come out of many of this. Right? Faculty training, of course, is critical. No doubt about it. I'm not a person who is a technology guy. I've got no idea of IT. I don't know what is computer science, but I'm only a user, right? And as a user, what is it that I need to know? What's the platform? How does it work? How do I upload a video? How do I do that? You know, these are the components that I would have to know as a faculty member. So this is the component that we really need to look into, right? And of course, encouraging faculty to design new courses with technology in mind. And I think that's important because the moment we look at how do I make this online, I'm delivering face-to-face, I've got a video. Is there anything else that I could do in terms of making it very visual, right? That's important, right? And I think it's very critical that the IT department works very, very closely with faculties. This is very important. So that's the component wherein which that they would really need help on, right? And that if we do it well, we're on track. Let's look at the next level. Interdepartmental collaboration, to me, I think is one of the key components here. I've seen design, course syllabuses. Say, for example, you've got a business module in an engineering degree. You've also got a business module in a business degree. Now, why do we replicate things? Why can't we have one program which has gotten uploaded on the same module over there as well as over here? Interdepartmental becomes extremely very critical. Use the best knowledge of the business school to bring that particular modules and offer it into the engineering degree if it's the same subject. Why are we duplicating? We have more time. If we don't duplicate, we've got more time, we can do more research. Every now and then we got to look at it in terms of more time means more research, and that's extremely very helpful when you look at it in that way. So the standardized lectures can go on. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. A la carte degree. I had a very interesting conversation when I think it was Michelle. We were having a cup of coffee in a hotel, and you did talk about the Vice Chancellor having said, why can't we have a la carte degrees? Why can't we have students choose what they want to do? Why are we directing students' lives by saying you got to do X, Y, Z? Right? It's quite interesting. And I think that's wonderful. We are forcing sometimes students to do what we want them to do, but sometimes they want to choose what they want to do. So long as you can go and pick from the online, these are the kind of modules that you really want to do, and that would mean that will give you a bachelor's in whatever, or a master's in whatever. Wow, fantastic. Let the corporate world judge me in terms of whether I have what it takes for a job that I'm applying. Interesting thought process. That's big picture thinking. Fabulous. And I think it's a fantastic way of looking at things and how it would be in the future. A buffet of modules, and you go and pick, and you got a degree of your own. Right. Let's move on to the very, very last bit.
I was just going to say, Nithi, there are universities even in India which is offering this kind of opportunity for students to pick and choose their modules, and then they can run a program by themselves. It's already available.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic, and I think it should become more popular. Yeah. It should be advocated to students to say, well, we have got choices. You've got all of these degrees, and you also have got these a la carte degrees. You could go and pick and choose what you want to do. Absolutely, and it's fantastic if it's there. And the other bit is about alumni interactions, and my understanding is a lot of the times we forget our alumni, and it's actually quite true. We do forget. They graduate, they leave, and we forget. And I remember what a tough time it took for the very university I graduated from in the UK to try and grab hold of alumni who were in India. And we went on a 3-year search because many of this was not even sitting in the databases on the other side. And this is very sad if we don't incorporate them. They can be of great value. I know of people who have actually graduated from universities and they complained everything that went on there. Well, this wasn't right, that wasn't right, this wasn't right. And there's an alumni gathering, they're the first people there. And they never disconnect from the place where they graduated from, always, no matter how much they complain, right? And it's fantastic. Use them, get them on as guest lecturers. Upload their videos. They'll be very, very connected, happy to do all of that, pretty much. And it actually sells in the placement of the graduates as well, in many ways. And it certainly does. And a very last bit here, which is about the macro approaches. And we talked about assessments, we talked about exams. And one of the successful models in which that is used on the standardization is to have exam centers across. So if Satyamama is looking at wanting to have students not just in India, but abroad, yes, you could have exam centers, and these exam centers can be through the Indian High Commission, right? And that can be assigned. Absolutely, no problems at all. You could have very reputed institutions which you can actually choose to say, well, these are the places our examinations will be held twice a year. Interesting on the assessment, now that, you know, Stephen did talk about it early on in his presentation about one of the subjects in which my son is involved in. And I was quite fascinated in this one particular subject in law. He had a 10% online assessment module. Now, interestingly, the lecturer in that module made it such that this student can try any number of times to score better than what he scored earlier. And it's 10% of the entire 100% module. So he made an attempt and he got an 80%. No, I want to do better. You go and read up your books and, you know, you learn more, and then you go back into it. You don't get the same questions, by the way. And the question bank throws up a lot of other questions. Oh my God, it's all different again. Yes, you got to be prepared. But if you manage to get more, and if you're happy, leave it at that. What a fantastic way of encouraging students to go back to the books. It's not a question of they gave you a mark.
Gamification into the whole learning process.
Absolutely. Fantastic, isn't it? So what are we talking about student learning here, Stephen? Student learning is about, it's not about I got my mark and I move on, right? It's also about, can I better it? Can I do better? So a 10% section is given there for them to go back to their content again. So I thought it was a brilliant way of trying to encourage students to come on board, pretty much, right? Yeah, of course, you've got fantastic, you've got plagiarism softwares are absolutely available now. So you don't have to worry. Even on-campus students, for example, when they're submitting their assignments, faculty might think, I don't know if they did it. Well, that's always a doubt whether it's on-campus student or is a distance learning student is always the question. But you have got softwares like Turnitin. It tells you the percentages of plagiarism in every form, right? And it gives it away. It's just a fantastic way of putting check and balance in terms of the credibility of the work done. And of course, we need to have a lot of digitalization of our resources, because the library it shouldn't be seen as you've got to come here face to face and open up and get into the library. We've got to have these digitalizations that happens. So I think from a Satyabama point of view, I think every department or the schools will have to start thinking in terms of what courses are we talking about, and are we ready for it in terms of the digitalization of these journals and books, whether they're available, and then taking a plan. What's our plan? 5-year plan, what are we going to do? And I think that would be a very interesting starting point. And that's all I've got to say for my part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. John, sir, you're back there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Very much, sir. Sure, sir.
Just really have been tried that co-host option.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
Thank you.
So I saw a lot of hands go up. A couple of names there. So if there are people who want to have questions to be asked, then we can take those questions and share some of them. And we can also be in touch with you even after that to give any information that you'll want. I saw one Geeta ma'am's hand go up. Is it possible for unmuting her and she could ask a question?
There are a couple of others also raised.
Sure, anybody, sir. And
Yeah.
if they're wanting a question directed to any one of us, or in general, then we can come back and answer the questions that they have. So you can unmute, no, sir, now?
I'm unable to. You need to control it.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay. You could ask your questions in the chat box if you all can type there. That's one possibility. I can also unmute you. Any questions? There are so many of you, so I have to look through to find, your particular name when it comes up. So just give me a minute.
Stephen, just whilst you're doing that, I had a question that was put to me, so I can maybe answer that whilst we're kind of doing the tech stuff. So there was it's a really understandable question around how do you manage students that are perhaps not embracing the fact that they have to continue their education in this format in order to get, the credits that they need. So perhaps they're not participating as requested, perhaps they've got connectivity issues or so on. So how do you deal with that? And I think it's one of these challenges that we're all going through at the moment. I think there is an element of trust that is needed, but I think it's really important to kind of reinforce the message when these are compulsory lectures, these are compulsory assignments, then for the students that are maybe taking their foot off their education because they've got the freedom and are luxuriating in it, there has to be constant reiteration of the fact that, without this, they will fail the module. Without participation, they will, this is not, we're not going back onto campus next semester and forgetting this semester as a write-off. We're really reinforcing through good communication that how essential is that they participate. Another part of that question was around connectivity and what happens when a student says that they can't get connected to be able to deliver the assignment or to participate in the online lecture and so on. And that is a really, really tough one to know how to deal with that. I guess maybe having some flexibility in how you'll accept their assignments, maybe making some suggestions about alternative tools that they might use to compress files so that they're sending a PDF rather than a PowerPoint presentation, or little pieces of advice that might help with that. But obviously things with connectivity it's a fight that we're all fighting just now. So I thought that was a really interesting and very relevant question.
Sure. Okay. Madan Kumar G. Sir, you have asked how to inspire and engage the students throughout the online session. One of the things that we do is if you're on a platform that gives you the access to talk to people. See, one of the beauty is now I can see every one of your name here. Most of you have got your names here. Some of you have your phone name, but that's fine. That's only one or two. But I can actually see all your names here. Like I can directly speak to, say, Surya Rajkumar sir, or I can talk to Mary Sajin. I can say Lakshmi Priya, Kumar Natarajan. So you have the names there and you address them as if you are addressing in a face-to-face situation. So when you are teaching a concept and say, okay, now how do you understand this, Mary Sajin? Can you give us some idea about it? You are asking them to come in. Okay, so it's only a matter of getting used to it, and you will find that people, for many reasons, they put off their videos. Like for example, when we began this session, we asked all of you to cut off your video because of the bandwidth. So many of you have difficulty with so many people and all the videos coming in. It can be a challenge. So you cut that down, but that doesn't mean that they are not there. Okay. For example, if you're taking a concept, and I do this all the time when I take an online session, I say to them, now I won't tell you who I'm going to ask a question, but I can ask a question to any one of you. And if you have a 50 size student class and you have the name list of all the students and you know who's logged in for the day, you can ask a question to any one of them directly and say, can you explain this? Just like how you would do in a class. And I'm telling you, students today, as what, Michelle was saying, they are much more familiar with the technology and they have a flair for this, and they're chatting and communicating in their groups all the time. They will come instantly back to you to give the information that you want. Okay, so there are many, many, many ways you can have. There is a concept called in virtual classrooms, a very interesting one called the water cooler time or water cooler talk. You know, it's a time when you actually don't become too serious and you allow the students and you to have a simple chat on what's happening. You will see the kind of engagement that happens there. And what I told you the other time is how do you engage is that once classroom is over, and you find that some of them are not engaging or engaged as much, make the little bit of effort. That's where your role as not a teacher alone comes in, but your role as a coach or a mentor comes in as well. If you can have a one-on-one communication with that student, you'll actually do a world of good for them. Their enthusiasm picks up, they believe that you're interested in them, and they come back to your classes all the more engaged. Give them a little bit of homework. Ask them in small groups to break out. Now, if you have a class of 50 to teach, I would recommend a platform that gives you the option of breaking them into smaller groups and working. And kind of make that groups permanent over 1 or 2 weeks. You see the amount of energy and activity that they create. They come back to present, they come back to speak. They would make things much better than what you can expect. So that's what I would reply to you, Madan Kumar. And there's another madam who had asked, sir, you told us in the beginning that there are many software for assessment. Could you please share a few? Not one, ma'am. There are plenty, and it all depends upon the subject that you have. There's an assessment if you have maths as your subject. If you have English, there's another one. So depending on the subject that you have, we have a complete list of them in a large document. That's why I said this is just to get a touch and feel of your problems and challenges. But when you're getting into specifics, what your department needs and what your students need, then we can share those tools with you specifically as per your subject, and that we'll make it available to you after this program is over. You know, that's from our side, our commitment. Okay. Another question from Dr. Gayatri says, sir, how do you teach practical lessons like in dentistry? Ma'am, that's definitely a challenge. Okay, so you'll have to create some kind of an infrastructure beforehand. You know now that even medical sciences are taught online. Okay, doctors are directing another doctor to conduct a surgery through telemedicine. Okay, so there are simulation models that are available, simulation software that are available, where you create those softwares, and you can even show that you are conducting a surgery here in which the other person there can see that. So definitely, that's what we said. Some of this you can do at your level. Some of them you can do it at a department level. Some of this has to come from the university level. That's why we are very careful in saying how this online changes can happen over a period of time. Okay. 2 of my sisters are doctors. So I remember in those days, they used to literally have real bones, you know, at home. And we used to have that at home, and they used to study for all their subjects. But now you have models available. Everything is common models subsequently. Today, there aren't even models. Softwares gives you everything. Every cross-section of everything is available. So today, if you have your subject, and if you search, ma'am, that are definitely available, we and our team can help you to identify for dentistry, especially if you have that. Okay. I'm just going to go down and pick up another one. How do you encourage and motivate a part of the class weak students? Your concern is definitely for the weak students here, because they are not participating or they are not involving themselves. The strategy for them is to persevere with them over a period of time. But the joy of online teaching is, I'm sure you know that every student has different ways or learning styles. Online teaching gives you that much more flexibility to pick a tool or a method by which the students is much more comfortable learning than a face-to-face class. Okay, so visual learning can be there, you know, auditory learning can be there, learning with doing things with their hands is possible. So when you put them into groups and find out their learning style, There are simple tools available. I was chatting with another group of experts a couple of months back, much before COVID. We were talking about a university in Switzerland where the professors, what they're doing is they first identify the learning styles of students and they group them together to learn from that way. You know, their intelligence appeals to them. What happens to them is when you give that scope of freedom for them to learn and come back, you will find, and when you assess how much they've known the subject and learned the subject, you'll be shocked and surprised to see the students that we consider as weak have much more to offer and give because of the way that they have learned it. So the flexibility of giving information to the student actually increases when you have it. So there are different possibilities. There are different methods available because you're actually appealing to the learning, a desire of the students and the way that they can make it easier for them to learn. I hope we have answered many of your questions. You can actually keep asking them. We can route your questions through John Bruce, sir. We can also make our, Nithi and I are here in India, very much in Chennai. So we can make ourselves available to you. Please contact us. I'll ask John Bruce, sir, to actually give all of you our informations, contact details, as well as Michelle's. If you have any other further specific questions, you saw Michelle's university is an university that is skill-based. That's completely teaching people for occasional training where they started off, and they have to teach practicals. You know, the other day we were listening, you can actually conduct physics and chemistry lab sessions online. Literally, my friend's teacher goes around CBSE schools and teaches how you can make chemistry class exciting. Now she has found out a software where you can actually conduct, all the lab practicals online with the students and teach from there. She used to travel all remote places like Jalandhar and other places, but now she says she's creating a platform by which you can teach sitting at home in Bangalore. So all this is coming in. The thing is, this is always available. It's just that we had turned a blind eye because we were used to a conventional method and we are very comfortable with that. And why would we want to change it? But thanks to COVID, there is a difficult side to it. But the good side to it is it's shaken us up, and it is giving us the opportunity to see the tremendous possibilities of teaching different subjects in different ways. Okay.
Very true. And you're right about that simple point that we've actually turned a blind eye because we've been in comfort zones. And as they say, that resistance to change is always there because we are in comfort zone, isn't it?
Yes.
That's always the fact.
Yeah. There is one particular question you may want to take it, Nithi. It says from Prabha Om Prakash, I think. Is it possible to control plagiarism, copying the assignment submission? In case of any analytical problems, the answers are going to be the same. So how do you evaluate them individually?
Well, I think, in terms of numerical based, I think, you're probably likely to get answers which is pretty much the same in terms of the way in which somebody had given it. I think it's more in the cases where in which you're pulling out stuffs which doesn't belong to you and you say that it's yours. And that's exactly where the plagiarism software comes in, right? So I think it's a mechanism wherein which even in the human eye is very, very difficult to sort out, and technology is doing it brilliantly, right? So if, for example, the question is related to, arrive at a solution and give the steps involved, a student has to put the steps involved and to be able to explain it. But if it is readily available somewhere and it's all about numbers, then of course it's debatable, isn't it? Because numbers are something that can be, obtained by anybody, and it could be the same number too, because there's only one answer. But I think we are talking more in terms of the textual format, the explanation, and so on and so forth. And that's where it really comes in the plagiarism component. And in the UK, for example, it's treated with almost like a criminal offense in the academia to do anything to do with plagiarism.
That's true.
Okay. Michelle, you want to say something?
No, I was just agreeing. We use the software that Nithi mentioned there, that Turnitin, and yeah, it's compulsory use, and it's something that we feel is really important for the students, again, for them to own their education and to be able to evidence that. And we do notice, particularly at master's level, that if students haven't had that experience at bachelor's level, then they find it very, very challenging at master's level, which is more research oriented, to be able to justify that, you know, their work is their own. So definitely, I think Turnitin is kind of universal in the UK by way of plagiarism in a software tool, or plagiarism prevention software tool.
And it's quite brilliant. It says 8% copied, 34% similarity. It tells you everything. I mean,
It does.
It tells you similarity. So if you have 50% similar to what others have written, so it really means that there's not much of originality in what you've submitted, isn't it?
So when that kind of feedback is given to the student is forced to go back and write and come. And that's where our, you know, generosity with this, you know, students should be there, that they go back, rewrite and come back, just like how Nithi was saying. Because at the end of the day, it's not what we are looking at for students to do, but we are actually wanting them to learn. Each of the component that is available in online gives that leeway for students to go back, learn and come. Nithi, there's another very interesting question, and I want to pose that to you. Dr. Kishore says, so one of the key parameters of academic program success is industry acceptance. I'm interested to know the possible timeline for industry to accept online degree. Because if industry accepts it, he says, every university will be very keen on bringing this on board very quickly. So you can say what's been the experience in UK and other places, and how in India, or how long it will take for that particular differentiation which is there between online distance education and, you know, on-campus education. What's the kind of difference that is available?
Yeah, I think the issue really is the origin, how it all happened many years ago. And I think this distance learning education has always been seen as a separate department, has been seen as a, you know, it is, I mean, in a way seen as degree of the lesser God, if I want to call it. And if you want to come for the better degree, you come to the on-campus. It was created that way, and that's exactly the whole problem that we are actually having today. So the way to actually bring on industry acceptance is, first of all, for the university to say, well, listen, it's on-campus or online, this degree is awarded by this department. The students graduate at the graduation ceremony just with everybody else. The assessment is exactly the same. There is no compromise at all. And only then we are talking about an industry acceptance. And right now, the degree certificates, in a way I've seen it, that it's Directorate of Distance Education. It says it. And in a way, you know, we are diluting the value in that sense. So I think it's quite important that the starting point is actually from the universities, colleges themselves, by saying, well, this is exactly the same. We're not waiting for an industry to come forward and say, well, can you tell us, you know, can make some changes? And it has to happen from at the college level.
Terrific, terrific. One of you has given a very positive feedback about the whole thing. You say, so your session has given us a new hope, and for my teachings through online, thanks for your positive note you shared for encouraging our positive strength. Absolutely, because I believe that the best is in us, and there is so much of potential all of us have as faculty. And if we can go through that exploration route of exploring things, for sure we'll fail, we'll definitely make mistakes. You can be rest assured the students that you teach are going to be 10 times more, you know, knowledgeable online than us, but that's where the joy is, you know. For a change, if you flip around and make your students your coaches and mentors and tutors in the online learning and give the keys to them. You saw between, you know, John Bruce sir and me and Michelle, we exchanged this host. We gave the rights of running the session to each other. Now give this rights to the students and see even the dumbest will be the most engaged in your class, because they have this ownership to learn and they're coming in. That's how you engage, you know. One of you had again asked, we're not sure whether they're listening in, involve them. You know, the online platform gives you tremendous scope. And I've been witnessing this in the last 4 weeks that I've been closed down. I switched immediately into training online. And I can't tell you the kind of experiences that we have been having, because I've been running Train the Trainers for teaching online to my trainers. You know, we have been talking to John Bruce, sir, to come and train your students online, 500 at a time. So we have been doing this course, and I can guarantee you that the amount of engagement is unbelievable. Because we broke them into small groups. 4 of them had to make a presentation that day. The entire host rights were given to them. They had to share their slides. They had to tell what they learned and what the others had to evaluate them. So you make the students evaluate the other students who are doing it. You just become a facilitator. For too long, we have been the one source of knowledge. You know, the source of knowledge has been just the teacher alone. The more you share it, the more you get the best out of everyone around you. So I think it's a possible.
I have a little something to say in here, if that's all right.
Yes.
Yeah, Megha, go ahead. Yeah, you were raising hand
Right.
for a long time. Yeah.
It's just that I have had an opportunity to have, have done my studies in both the structures in India as well as in the UK. I believe that if I see from a student point of view, there's a little something that the academics needs to do in India, is that all our entire focus when it comes to education online or distance learning is largely dependent on the academics. So this is more of academic led than student led. So student doesn't get that confidence in them. So we need to probably get on that level where we build that confidence amongst them and tell them that no, this is exactly what you're doing in the classroom. And it's not very different, so that I don't lose interest in that. So it's very, very important, because of course this is something very new, and this current situation can act as a building exercise for us, like an opportunity where we can just give that confidence to them and say that, see, this is something that has happened, and we are in the transition period, so we can probably utilize this, in the future to come, that this is how it works. So when tomorrow they decide to go for study abroad or anything, they don't find this as very, very challenging. So probably this can be done.
Interesting. Okay. 1 or 2 more last 2 questions, because I know we are running out of time. I don't want to hold all of you back. There's another interesting question that has come through John Bruce from Dr. Bhupesh, who says, so what are the modalities of having online internships? Okay, online internships. Nithi, Michelle, or Megha, would you have any idea? Because I can answer that, but I thought I'll ask one of you to say, and if not, I'll come back, because I'm in another HR forum, and there has been a lot of discussions that have been going on there about this.
So what we are seeing, and this is very much a kind of reaction to this moment in time, it's hard to say if it will continue longer term, is that a number of companies are, they have projects that are needing fulfilled. So they're kind of slicing up their business needs and chunking it into projects in a way slightly differently than they do when they're in an open working environment, where you've got an office of people that are maybe multiple people are helping on. But what we've certainly seen is companies are going through this at the same time as us. They are identifying different processes, different needs, and we are being approached by some of our industry partners to say, we've got a really nice standalone project that, with supervision, from a manager using a platform like Microsoft Teams or something like this, it can actually be handed over to a student to kind of take from A to Z in terms of completion. So, companies are innovating, they're responding, and they're recalibrating how they, their business operations, and, they're, like say, our industry partners are actually proactively coming to us and offering projects that previously they wouldn't have ever thought, to offer to university students for an internship. So hopefully that will happen as well as in India. But we've certainly seen that start to happen in the UK.
Yes. Creativity at its best is happening in these days. What seemed impossible seems possible today. Okay. We have 2 more questions, and I see in the message box there are 41 more questions. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to assure you, John Bruce, sir, I have a request. that in Zoom, you have this possibility of saving this entire chat that has been there. It'll come with the name and the questions that are asked. So if you can save that chat file and share it with us, I will distribute it between Nithi, me, and Nega, and we'll ensure that all your questions are answered. So that's an assurance from us. Instead of taking it online here, we'll come offline and we'll give the name of the person who's asked the question, and we'll try and briefly answer that, including the tools that they've been asking for assessment. Will that be fine, sir?
Sure, sir. Sure. Definitely.
Yeah. So you'll have to save the chat before closing. I think your technical team can help you on that, and then you can always get that and give it to us. We'll answer those 45 questions which are there. 2 questions that I'll ask, very interesting. Sir, in India, we have poor internet connection, and sometimes we can't hear properly what the speaker says. And most of our students using phone as their tool to connect, and how do you overcome this problem? Now, I don't know how many of you are watching TV, and I would recommend watch India Today, because India Today has been having sessions regularly every day at 8 and 9 o'clock to give you what's happening to the education industry. Every day they come out with some information. And if you know Khan Academy, the founder of that is an Indian who's in the California now, one of the finest online virtual ways of learning. He says you'd be surprised to know 20 to 30% of students in the US cannot connect online. Okay, so it's not just an Indian problem, it's a problem everywhere. So this is a macro problem, this is a larger issue, but you can be assured that in India, we are much better off than many other countries, including many of the advanced countries. Another one, it's the cheapest in India to have an internet connection. What definitely will happen is the internet providers are going to increase their bandwidth, and they're going to make more, towers and others available, so that the quality of internet will definitely improve even in the remote places. But for a quick answer, sir, most of these institutes all over the world, if you look at these informations coming in, what they're doing is they are putting up a very short video of your input. So even if they can't listen in to you, they can download your video, and WhatsApp is the best. And you know how children use WhatsApp today, and in which how videos are sent. So you can ensure that your inputs are given in short formats, and they will still get the information that they need. And related to that question is, what is the ideal duration for taking online sessions for one session? And this is asked by Dr. Nandakumar from Civil Department. Sir, the general guideline, as far as I understand, I may be wrong in this, but my experience tells me that anything between 1.5 hours to 2 hours with a short break in between is an ideal one to have. You will be forced to condense your information, and you can get the best out of your students in a 1 hour to 1.5 hour class. And in case they are interested, like what's happening to our session now, it can get extended a little longer than that, and nobody complains to stay in that. So ideally, 1 to 1.5 hours is what you should target, sir. So with that, I hand it over to John Bruce, sir. Last few words from Nithi, just 1 or 2 sentences from you. Michelle and Nega, if you can say something, then we can hand it over back to John Bruce, sir. You all have anything to say?
So I'll go first. All I would like to say is keep up the great work. Please give yourself credit for all you have achieved so far and all the innovations that you've done without even consciously calling them innovations. So, everyone's doing a great job, and I hope, from this session you've taken some inspiration, but I hope you'll also take some reward for all your achievements to date. You're doing a great job.
Beautiful.
Lovely. And from my end, thank you very much for the time. And I think it's for the people who are a little bit apprehensive, I think this is the best time to take a pause and think, am I being too apprehensive? It's perhaps a moment to think about and say, well, there are many ways in which that we could go about doing it. So am I a stumbling block in my own thinking? It's something perhaps to reflect upon. And I think that would certainly be very helpful to look into changes that we could incorporate.
Megha, you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you very much for having us today from Robert Gordon University. And I am really delighted to see so many academics in one place today, you know, having to believe and accept this challenge, what we have in hand. And we'll be delighted to help you forward. Yes.
Great,
Thank you.
Neha. Thanks for
Thank
having
you. John Bruce, sir, it's
Yes,
all
sir.
yours. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all four of you. You know, like